So we're on Daf Yud Daled.
No, Gemara's here now.
Oh, we have, yeah, Gemara's here, yeah, we're ready to go.
I'll just show you that we're on Gemara here.
Okay, so we're on Daf Yud Daled, and there's the Mishnah. Kol Shivas Yomim, Uzarik Sadam, Umakri Sektoris, Umetev Asaneros, Umakri Vesarosh Vesarega. Thank you. Thank you. Gemara's over here should be available. So we said before the first Mishnah. This is just the second Mishnah. We just got to the second Mishnah. The first Mishnah from the Abbez was that the Kohen Gadol is secluded in the Beis Hamikdash for 7 days, and everything we learned about that, about preparing the Kohen, about the wife yesterday we talked about. So now during the 7 days, also it says that we get him ready to do the avodah for Yom Kippur in preparation of Yom Kippur. So he practices, and therefore, even though the regular Korban Tamid during these 7 days that any Kohen can do, you don't need dafka the Kohen Gadol, and the whole year round he doesn't dafka do it. But during the 7 days, we want him dafka to do it in order he should be regular in doing the avodah. So Kol Shivas Hayamim, all these 7 days that he's being in Bakrishan, he's inside the Beis Hamikdash. Uzarik Hasadam, Umakti Hasaktoris, Umetev Hasaneros, Umakti Hasarosh Vasaregel. He does the avodah of the Korban Tamid. Probably the Musaf also on Shabbos. So the Zrik Hasadam, he's the one who throws the blood on the Mizbeach of the Korban Tamid. Maktir Sektoris, every day there's a Ketores every day. There's a special Ketores on Yom Kippur, of course, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but that's something else. But every day there was a Ketores on Yom Kippur. Also, there's a regular Ketores that they put on the Mizbeach Pnimi and the inner Mizbeach that's inside the Mizbeach Hazav. So he is the one who does that also every day of the 7 days in preparation, getting ready. And Meitev Hasaneros means that you clean out the leftover of the menorah that had the wicks and the oil that was left over from the previous night. You light it towards the afternoon. In the late afternoon, that's when you do adlakas haneros. And in the morning, you clean out the menorah from what was left over from the previous night. You don't light it until the evening. So that's called a avodah called a tovas haneros. So he does that also. That's from the korban tamid that is cut into different pieces, different cuts, and then they bring it onto the mizbeach to burn those limbs on the mizbeach. So there's a seder of how you do it and how many kohanim usually bring it up. And they're the ones who put it on the mizbeach, but he should do the rosh and the regel. That's one kohen usually does it, and he takes the place of that kohen, and he puts on the mizbeach the head of the animal and the leg, which means the right foot, the right leg. And we'll have later on, we'll get more familiar with these concepts later on, or in a different masechta. But the point is to say that he does these avodos every day during the 7 days in order to get usual in doing the avod. He'll be doing all these things on Yom Kippur for many korbanos. So he should get used to doing the avodah. Of course, to do the zrika is probably a regular thing that the Kohanim do, but the Kohen Gadol might have been very experienced probably. But before Yom Kippur, he does the avodah for the 7 days. Then the Mishnah throws in a side point, the rest of the year, whenever he wants to, he's allowed to. He does have a privilege, whenever he wants to, he has the right to do it, and he overrides any other Kohen who might have been from that week's shift or that day's shift, and he has precedence over anybody else if he wants to. But during the 7 days, not only may he's supposed to do dafka. The Kohen Gadol has the privilege to bring on the mizbeach the first choice, whatever he wants to do, to bring the rosh doesn't mean that he goes before anybody else as far as the order. The order will be according to the order of the limbs that are supposed to be sacrificed, burnt on the mizbeach in a special order. But he has the right to choose which one he wants to do. Even if somebody won the prize, as we're going to see soon, there was a goral and somebody else should have the right to do it from that day's shift. The Kohen Gadol overrides anybody; he could do it. Also, notel chelek b'rosh, when they're giving out things of kachim like lechem apanim or by a korban shlomim, let's say, it seems that they divide things amongst the Kohanim, so the Kohen Gadol has the right to take before anybody else. So that those last 3 lines were just a side point, like parentheses, telling us what the rest of the year. Shakal Hayomim. But on Yom Kippur, the main point of the Mishnah is to say that during the 7 days, he dafka does the avodah in order to get usual, regular, in how to do the avodah.
This says the Mishnah that this regular makbid is a rosh is a regal. Say the pedarim.
Right. That's what it says. That
nice.
There's no pedarim is no. The pedarim, first of all, that's by a korban chatas. This is an oil over here, and everything goes on. Rosh Hashanah goes together. So if you mean the Potter, it goes together with the Rosh, and that's included. Whatever it says over there in Maseches Tamid, how do you do the first Kohen on the line of those who are marked with the parts of the animal? So he gets the first. He does the first. He's on first on the line, so to speak. And that he could do everything if he wants to. Also, if he wants to, probably he's allowed to do all of Devar. But that's what he's supposed to do.
What's with the Rosh? That's so, I don't understand what's he,
The carbon oil, when you cut it up into pieces, there are certain pieces. It says in Maseches Tamid how you divide the
Right.
animal, and then the Kohanim have a line like 5 Kohanim that they take different parts of the animal and bring it up to the
Rosh
Mizbeach.
Hashanah.
That's one. And then there's the regel. And then there's another one is going to be with the 2 defanos, the two flanks of the animal, and the left foot with the chazav, with the different parts of the animal. And on these 7 days, the Kohen Gadol is supposed to be marked with the first on the line, which is the Rosh and the regel. That's the first Kohen who is the marker of the head of the animal of the korban olah and also the right foot. And the Kohen Gadol is supposed to do that for these 7 days in order to get used to putting the limbs on the mizbeach. Okay, the Gemara continues. Man Tana, who's the author of our Mishnah? Means the Gemara has some problem over here, and we're looking for who could our Mishnah fit with. Amar Rav Chisda, the local Rabbi Akiva. The point is to say that our Mishnah cannot be like Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi Akiva do? The Rabbi Akiva, Amar Torah Shenafla Allah Vazah Timatu. Hechi Rabbi Avoda. So the Mishnah the Gemara is bringing in a side point that the Mishnah didn't talk about. We had it in the Brisa before a couple of times, that there was a machlokes. If you do hazah, do you sprinkle the Kohen Gadol during the 7 days of seclusion? Do you also sprinkle on him from the mechatas, from the paraduma, ashes and water mixture? So we said that it depends over there. If you hold Tumah Hudra B'tzibu or Tumah D'chuya B'tzibu, if you hold Tumah Hudra, then you don't have to. But if you hold Tumah D'chuya, so then it says that you did it. Some held every single day. Some did only the first and the third and the seventh. But you do sprinkle on the Kohen Gadol from the Mayim Mechatas according to the Mandam Tumah D'chuya B'tzibu. But really is Torah. The Kohen Gadol is really Torah. But just in case he's tamei or more for kedusha, for a maila, so you sprinkle on him even though he's tahor. But the problem is that it has a reverse effect. Rabbi Akiva holds that if you sprinkle mechatas is the term for the ashes and the water of the paraduma. So I'll just call it short mechatas. So Rabbi Akiva holds if you sprinkle mechatas on somebody that's tahor, so he doesn't need it and even messed it up, he becomes tamei. If he's tamei, so he becomes tahor. That's the whole point of mechatas. You sprinkle the paraduma ashes. But now you're talking about both ways. Maybe something else.
Who makes him tahane?
Who?
Kohen Gadol, who's being sprinkled on.
So if he that's
he's tahor, he will become
right.
tamei.
Right, that's what Rabbi Akiva holds. We don't hold like that. Rabbi Akiva holds that if the person was tahor, if you sprinkle on a tahor person, he doesn't need it, but it even makes it worse. That it makes him tamei. So therefore, the kasha is that since the Kohen Gadol is really tahor, so now by sprinkling on him, he becomes tamei. So he's not allowed to do the avoda. He has to go to the mikvah and then wait till Harav Shemesh, and he can't do the avoda. So to say that 37 days, both he sprinkle on him and also he does the avoda seem to be. Go ahead.
What's Rabbi Akiva's logic? How does he explain that? Because he was a custom. I mean,
Right, so the rest of the Amud here is all going to be about Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara is going to say answer to this question on Amud Beis, but the rest of the daf is like parentheses, so to speak, to explain, to elaborate on the Homachlokas of Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan. So we're going to get all the background. It's going to be psukim. I don't think it's going to be any svara over here, but it's going to be psukim. And that's going to be the rest of the Amud over here. But that's the Gemara's kasha, just to get the kasha. If you want to, we could skip and make the bridge Gemara and skip to the answer right away. But we'll do according to the Gemara's answer. Let's just put a little parentheses over here just to show what we don't need if you want to make an abridged version. All this is going to be extra credit over here. Not like extra credit, but up 1 second after I raised something over. I didn't know what I was doing with my finger. Okay. Up. Okay. So let's go to Amud Beis a second. And all this till the first line in Amud Beis is all just to explain to us the whole sugya. We don't really need it for the kasha and teretz. But okay. So the Gemara's kasha was, according to Rabbi Akiva, if you say that you're sprinkling on the Kohen Gadol every day, you can't hold that also you're going to do avoda every day, because once you sprinkle on him and he's tahor, so it's going to make him tamei. And if he's tamei, you can't do an avoda. That's what the words say. Rabbi Akiva holds that a tahor, that the hazah means the mechatas fell on him, so it makes him tamei. He can't do avoda. Must be doesn't go like Rabbi Akiva. Yes.
And all the mismachim and everything went to Hashem. And so that phone call.
So where do we start on the next page?
If you top line and the top line, that's when everybody's going to answer. Everybody's going to say the teretz, and the teretz is going to be On the
Yeah.
top line, Abaya Omar.
Abaya
But
Omar.
till there is going to be a bonus to get background on the whole subject about Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Vizah Torah Latamei. The pasuk says that in Parshas Chukas, when it says how do you sprinkle the Parah Aduma, it says that the Torah person should sprinkle onto the tummy person and it becomes Torah. But it's a little extra word. The Gemara is going to explain soon that it didn't have to say that. It could have said Vizah Tahor or love. The Gemara is going to say it doesn't have to say Ala Tamei. It expresses that the Torah person should sprinkle onto the tummy person. Ala Tomei Torah, Ala Torah Tomei. Did Rabbi Kiva? So Rabbi Kiva dashes from this pasuk that if the person is sprinkling on with Tomei, it'll make him Torah. But if the person is sprinkling on with Torah, it's going to make him Tomei. And that's what we just said. The Rabbi Kiva will become Tomei. He won't be able to do the avoda. Did Rabbi Kiva? The Chachamim argue, and they don't hold it as drasha. So the Gemara could have just said, "Rabbanan don't hold it," but they want to tell you what do they do with the pasuk. The pasuk is it says something about Allah Tamei, special pasuk. So the Rabbanan don't hold the Rabbi Kiva's drasha; they hold a different drasha. So we're going to get now information on a new drasha, which we don't need for our subject either. But we're going to just explain what Rabbanan do with this pasuk, a new drasha, and that says that this whole halacha about sprinkling is only when it's on something which is vulnerable to tumah. That the whole halacha of hazah is only if you sprinkled it on something which is vulnerable to tumah. And what does that mean? So we're going on this subject, on this tangent over here. Mahi, now we learned in the Mishnah and Parah. So there's the behemoth, the animal, is an example of something which is not vulnerable to tumah. A live animal is not vulnerable to tumah. A dead animal gives off tumah, but a live animal is not vulnerable to tumah. If you what's the thing if you sprinkled on an animal? It doesn't ever need that. It's not something at all that needs hazah. You never have to sprinkle on an animal. A person is vulnerable to tumah, even if he's tummy, or even if he's not tummy, but he's vulnerable to tumah. It seems here the point is that if it was something which is not even vulnerable to tumah, so they say if you sprinkled, the Mishnah, the way Rashi explains, the kavanah is just saying that we don't care what your kavanah was, we care what you actually did. Even if you almost kavan to sprinkle on an animal, but Lamaisa went onto a person, you missed. You had an animal and a person in front of you, you wanted to sprinkle on the animal, but you didn't. You hit on the animal, you hit on the person. So that's okay. That's called the kud hazah. Imesh be'ezov yishna. If there's leftover water still in the ezov is the grass that you use, the hyssop, whatever the grass is that you sprinkle the mechatas with onto the person. So if you have leftover water over there still, so it's a kosher hazah. The way they explain seems to be that you have to dip it into the kli that has the mechatas, and then you sprinkle it. So
Sprinkle at a distance, or you can actually touch them.
I don't think it does. Just sprinkle it. I think so, but I don't know. That's not a subject. I don't know. I think he throws it. Vihiza. Just to touch it is not called vihiza really. He has to spritz it, sprinkle. So here it says that if lamaisa it was sprinkled onto a person. So if there's leftover yishna, he may continue to use it for somebody that needs it because it was a kosher hazah. It wasn't a problem. But if he sprinkled on an animal, no matter, we don't care what his kavanah was. Again, like it says, niskavan hazas ala adam. We don't care what his kavanah was. Lamaisa, he sprinkled on an animal. The meish beis of lo yishna. Even if he has leftover water in there, he can't use it for real hazah now for somebody because that was hazah psula. The fact that he sprinkled on an animal, so it wasn't a good hazah, so he can't use that water. The water in the ezov became possible. So
excuse me, I'm sorry. Yishna means he can't use it. It looks like the word yesh.
Yishna means to repeat, and Rashi explains that Yishna means you may use it again. You may use it again without having.
If there's water in the ezov, is that what we're saying?
You may repeat. It means you sprinkle again on something that needs hazah. He sprinkled on an animal. He sprinkled on, the first case was he sprinkled on a person, even though he didn't mean to, but he sprinkled on a person, so that's all we care about.
No, it says Allah
So
I
that
thought
was
it
a
says
kosher-
Allah. It says Al Behema. I'm getting
says,
nitka vein
Niskaven
lahaz. It's Behema.
Yeah, but you have to read on. That's only half a sentence. Niskaven means he intended to, but he didn't do what he intended. It's a bit confusing. Just to make it easy, skip these words if you want, just for a second. Skip the first. I'm sorry, this is all getting.
He wanted to do it on the Behema, but he did it on the man.
You're right. We don't care what he wanted to do. We care what he did. So he's al adam. If he sprinkled on a man, so if he has leftover water still in the grass, he can use it again. It's kosher because the fact that he sprinkled on a person, that was considered a kosher hazaya, so he may use it again. If he sprinkled on an animal, he's ala behema. Even we don't care what his kavanah was. The skavan lazas ala adam. That does make a difference what his kavanah was. Even though he intended to sprinkle on a person, lamaisa. If he sprinkled on a animal, that makes the hazah psula. That wasn't a good sprinkling because he sprinkled on something which is not vulnerable to tumah. So yesh be'ezov, even if there's leftover water in the ezov lo yishnet, you can't use it again. You have to dip it in again into the bowl to get more hazah, because the hazah that's on your ezov is puzzled because it was sprinkled onto an animal.
Is it different if the person is tahor or tameh?
Here it doesn't say. It just says if he's vulnerable to tumah, adam. That's what it seems to say. So all this again, these 3 lines, all this thing are 3 lines, 4 lines. All this is not our subject. It's just saying what your Rabbanan do with the drasha of Rabbi Akiva, because we're interested in Rabbi Akiva's drasha. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says that if you sprinkled onto a Torah person, he became tameh. Rabbanan then hold that. So what did they do with the pasuk? So I came to tell you what they hold with the pasuk. That if you sprinkle on something which is not vulnerable to tumah, it's not a kosher azaya, and therefore you'd have to dip it again if you want to sprinkle on something that you have to. So dip it in again because what you have in the azov became pasuk. That's a side subject. The Gemara continues. That's like it's called that a tangent within a tangent. Those 4 lines is a tangent on the tangent. The Gemara goes back to Rabbi Akiva. This was what our question is. Where does Rabbi Akiva get it from? So we did say the pasuk before. The Gemara is going to say it over again. It might even be like a double exposure of 2 gersos over here because the Gemara is going to be pretty repetitious about Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan. But here it's going to bring down the Bryce. It's going to just explain the words. My time at Rabbi Akiva. Where does Rabbi Akiva get the drasha that if somebody sprinkled on a Torah person, on a Torah person, that person comes to me because nichter rachmana vizator Allah, my Allah tamei. Why does it say vizator Allah tamei? Should have just said vizator Allah. We know someone a tummy person, somebody's tummy, so it says they should take the water and sprinkle on him. Why does it have to say on the tummy person? It's emphasizing my Allah tamei. Why does it have to stress the sprinkle on the tummy person? Shramina Allah tamei tor, Allah tor tamei. Then if you sprinkle on a tummy person, it makes him tor. But if you do the opposite, if you sprinkle on a person who's tor, it's gonna have the opposite effect and make him tummy. Rabbanan. And this is really repetitious. The Gemara said it already. The Rabbanan used it for a different drasha, which we just said that if you sprinkle on something which is not vulnerable to tumah, that azah becomes possible. Rabbanan, as we just explained, it comes to tell you that the thing which is vulnerable to tumah is the kind of azah that makes it a kosher azah. But if you sprinkle on something which is an animal, it's not vulnerable to tumah, so then the azah became possible. Mamish repetitious. It seems like it's a double gear over here. Avalacha kal v'chomer. Now the Gemara goes that the Rabbanan say that it's not reasonable. This is what Rabbi Emmanuel was asking, that it doesn't seem to make sense. So far we said a pasuk, but the Rabbanan say it's not logical. Does it make sense that you sprinkle on a tahor person if he becomes tamei? If, where's the words over here? First one on the line is kal v'chomer. If you sprinkle on a tummy person, it becomes tohor. So you sprinkle on a tohor person, isn't it surely that is going to be tohor? Well, it shouldn't mess him up, shouldn't make him worse. So the Rabbanan say it's not logical to say that the pasuk means that. But Rabbi Akiva says, on the contrary, we're looking for something which is not logical, because the drasha says that paraduma is not logical. Rabbi Akiva, Hainu dekam v'shlomo, amatiach kam l'v'yirecho kamimeni. It says a pasuk in Koheles, midashing about paraduma, that I thought I was smart. I thought I'm going to become smart, but it's from distance from me. I see that I can't. I don't understand paraduma. That's the famous drasha, that paraduma is something that's not humanly logical about it. So Rabbi Akiva says, they have no problem that it's not logical. That's okay. That's what it says. It's not logical. You have to have, of course, a reason. You know, what is the reason that it's not logical? That's already a deeper subject. But Rabbi Akiva says, I'm not bothered that it's not logical. The paraduma is out of logic. The Rabbanan say, no, we also agree that there's things that are not logical about paraduma, but not this. Rabbanan hahu, that drasha to say that there's something which is not within the realm of logic, the mazeh or the mazeh of tohor, the nogea ben tamei. They also agree that the person who sprinkles and gets sprinkled on is tohor. The person who touches it for no reason, he's tamei. Most people, we talk about it a few times each time. Everybody's surprised that all the drashas on Parshas Chukas say that the person who sprinkles becomes tamei, and that's not true. And the pasuk does seem to say it like that, but the Gemara says right here, mazu olav tohor. The person who sprinkles and the person who was sprinkled on is tohor. Who's tamei?
Mazin is what?
Mazin olav. There's mazeh is the sprinkler. Mazin olav is the person who's sprinkled upon. They're both tohor. Contrary to the pasuk pshat, and what people always say,
Oh, yeah, we hear that all the time.
Right.
It's not true.
So it's not true.
This is still in the Shaklatari.
No, this is true. Everyone agrees to this.
True?
Everyone agrees that mazin olav tohor, that the person who sprinkles is tohor. It doesn't become tamei. But nogeya bohen, if somebody touched the water, the mechatas for no reason, he becomes tamei. If someone touches the mechatas for no reason, he's tamei. But if somebody is using the mechatas in order to sprinkle, so then he doesn't become tamei. And that you could say is not logical. That's already your one say you want something not logical. This also doesn't fit into the logic. If you touch it, stam, you become tummy. But if you're doing it for the purpose of sprinkling, or you get sprinkled on, then it has the opposite effect, makes you tohar. So that's enough to be not logical. But Rabbanan say, but if someone sprinkled, he had the intention to sprinkle on somebody, but it was a chumrah or it wasn't necessary, but it was in the ritual of sprinkling. So then there doesn't become tamei. Rabbi Akiva says that since he's torah, so it's like a regular nogea, like somebody who touches it for no reason, he becomes tamei. So Rabbi Akiva says if you sprinkle on somebody that's torah, he also becomes. So Rabbanan say we agree that if somebody touches it for no reason, he becomes tamei. But if it was done in the ritual of sprinkling, he doesn't become tamei, even if he was torah and he didn't need it. The Gemara goes. The only machlokes is if they sprinkled on somebody that's torah, does it become tamei or not? And everybody agrees that the mazinallah, the sprinkled is torah, and the one who touched it for no reason is tamei. Machlokes is if they sprinkled on somebody who doesn't need it, but it was in the ritual of sprinkling. So the one say torah, Rabbi Akiva says tamei. And the Gemara continues with the rest of the page is going to be this drasha, which everybody agrees to. Again, the only point of machlokes is if they sprinkle on somebody that doesn't need it. But all this is agreed upon, and the Rabbanan say this is enough to be not logical. Rabbi Akiva says that my pasuk is also in the framework of not logical, and you don't have to have no kasha. But they remain with the machlokes. The Gemara says kasha, omazeh torah. This is the kasha everybody's asking. Doesn't everybody know a special pasuk? The one who sprinkles becomes tamei. The Gemara asks, is the sprinkler torah? The pasuk says the one who sprinkles the me'anida. Me'anida means the sprinkling water. The word nida doesn't mean a nida. We call a nida, a menstrual cycle. It means a person, the nida is called a nida because she's pushed aside. She's pushed away means that she's tummy. But here the word nida means to sprinkle. The mechatas is another word mechatas is called me'anida. So it says, Mazei me'anida yechabeis b'gadav. It says farish that the one who sprinkles has to wash his clothing because he became tummy. Not only he became tummy, also the clothing became tummy. So even though it didn't even touch the water. So it's farish pasuk. How could he say that the sprinkler is tohar?
Who's asking you?
The Gemara is jumping up. How could you say that the mazeh is tohar? This is the kasha everybody would ask. That the pasuk says openly that the mazeh is tamei. The Gemara answers it doesn't mean that. Of course, this is a drash level, but we pass along the drash level. And the shot level, everyone's good. The old David Torah here, Pashal Chukas, about what are they talking about? What are the David Torah? That you have to jump in and help people even if you're going to become tamei. They usually talk about kiruv, that even though you save the piece of people, bring them back, even though you're going to get messed up. So the drasha is not like that. The drasha is that you're not supposed to get messed up. But the Gemara Kasha, the pasuk says openly, what do we do with the pasuk? The Gemara answers, my mazeh nogeya. When it says in the pasuk sprinkling, it doesn't mean sprinkle. It means he just touched it for no reason. But the Gemara says, can't say that. Look at the whole pasuk. The pasuk says, umazeh me'anida yichabes b'gadav, v'anogeya v'me'anida yitmad arev. So it says in the pasuk both of them, v'aksiv mazeh, v'aksiv nogeya. The same pasuk says both of them. You can't say that when it says mazeh, when it says sprinkling, it means touching. It says in the pasuk, he who sprinkles, kach v'kach. He who touches, kach v'kach. So you see, it's not the same thing. It's two different things. But even a stronger kasha, mazeh boy kibus begadim, nogeya lo boy kibus begadim. Not only does it say both of them, it even says different about them. Not only does it say both of them, it says different, that the one who's mazeh, then he becomes so tamei that even his clothing become tamei. The one who just touched the me'anida, the one who touched the mechatas, he becomes tamei, but his clothing don't become tamei. But you see, you can't, the more just pushing, you can't say that the word mazeh means nogeya. You can't say that the word mazeh means touching because it's two different things. Mazeh means sprinkling. So the more answers, Ella, my mazeh no say. That's what the pasuk means. The pasuk says, that when it says mazeh, it doesn't mean sprinkling, it means carrying. There's two kinds of ways of having contact with mechatas, either by touching it, contact, or carrying it. He's carrying it in a bowl, but he didn't touch it. That's called no say.
Carrying the mechatat?
Right, carrying it in a bowl. He carries it in a bowl, whatever, in the grass, whatever, but he's not touching it. He didn't touch the mechatas. He just is carrying it, means he's carrying its weight without touching it directly. And we have many times that there's a difference between maga and masa. We always talk about maga, masa, ohel. Maga means direct contact. You touched it. Masa means that you carried its weight, and even without touching it. And ohel, there's something else, fine. But you have masa. Sira says there's a difference between nogeya and no say. Difference between maga and masa. The pasuk is telling you that the masa, someone who carried the weight of the mechatas, then he becomes tamei, even his clothing becomes tamei. If he just touched it, so then he becomes tamei, his clothing don't become tamei. So, but the pasuk shot that mazeh is sprinkled, no, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that it's sprinkled, it means no say. When it says sprinkling, It doesn't mean that he sprinkled. The Pashut Pshat is not true, not halacha, that if he sprinkled, he really tore. The Mazal Olav is tore. But the Gemara says, why does the pasuk say it's so roundabout? If it wants to say masa, say masa. Why say masa? Why such a funny way of saying it? The nichtov rachmana no say. So why doesn't it say so? If the pasuk means to say carry, so say carry. Why do you say sprinkle? The Gemara, my time mixed maza. That's part of the kasha. The answer is hakamash bulan the vina and shir hazah. That how much do you have to carry in order to become tamei? Really, the pasuk means you're carrying it for no reason. If you're carrying it in order to sprinkle on somebody, you're tahor. But the pasuk just means that if you carried the amount that you would need to sprinkle on somebody, that is the amount that you become tamei. So the reason why he says mazah is to tell you that if you carry the amount that you would be able to do azah with, then you're tamei. But again, only if you did it for no purpose. If you did it for the purpose of sprinkling, you're torah. But the one says that's not so. That the only tamei if you carry the amount which would have made somebody that you could have done sprinkling with. The more the kasha, that's not so simple. There's a machlokes. If when you sprinkle on somebody, there's a certain amount that has to come on him or not. Some say yes, some say no. There's no shear. As long as the mashu got on him, it's good enough. So if you say that there's no shear, so you can't tell me that you have to carry the shear hazah. There is no shear. The more answers. The machlokes is if how much has to reach the Gemara's words on the back of the man, how much have to touch the person you're sprinkling on in order to make him tor, how much has to reach his body. Some say a shear, some say no shear, even a mashu. But everybody agrees the facts are that you have to have in the bowl. How do you do sprinkling? You have a bowl with the mechatas, and you take the azov, you dip it in, it absorbs, and then you sprinkle onto the person. So surely in the kli it has to be enough that you should be able to get absorbed into the grass, into the azov, and then enough when you sprinkle it, something will come off. It's saturated enough that some of it will sprinkle off. So that what you have to have. It's a physical thing. You have to have that, or else you couldn't have done the azah. If you have such a mashu that it gets absorbed and that doesn't sprinkle, so you can't do azah. So everybody agrees that that amount you have to have in the bowl. Like the Gemara says, avol b'mana in the kli, tzricha you surely have to have an amount. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, how much is the amount that has enough to sprinkle? Today, sheyitbo, next page, today, sheyitbo.
That's the answer.
In order that you should be able to dip in the top of the azov, the givol is the growth that's on top of the azov grass, and then be able to sprinkle. So surely you have to have that much. If you don't have that much, then you're not able to do it. So in order to be tamei for carrying the mei chatas, you have to have carried that amount. That's why the pasuk expresses itself by saying even though the one who's doing it for the purpose of sprinkling is really torah. But the reason why it said no say in the word mazeh is in order to say that it's only tamei no say if you carried that amount. So just to sum
I
up,
don't know what that amount is. I'm still
the amount is that if you have a bowl that you take a grass and you dip it in, that it's going to get saturated. But and then when you sprinkle on the person, some of the water is going to be, there's an overload over there that'll sprinkle out. If you have a mashu, and even if it got absorbed into the
it won't go out.
That's not called shir hazah.
It will go out.
Right. Shir hazah means that you have enough that when you dip it in and you sprinkle, something's going to come off. So if you carry that amount, it's not too much. But if you carry that amount, then you're tamei master. If you carry less than that amount, you're not tamei master.
That's assuming he's doing for no purpose. He's not.
Yes, that's good. And that all not a Gemara's thing, but all that is only if you did it for no purpose. But if you really coming to be master on somebody,
to get the water to do the job.
So then he's really torah. So what do you want to say so far? Just to sum it up, to zoom out and sum up, everybody agrees that the mazan love is torah. The person who's tamei, he's the person who came to get sprinkled upon. He surely gets torah. That's the whole purpose. That you sprinkle on him to take him out of tumas mace. The person who did the job for him, that's sprinkling on him, so then it was also torah, contrary to the Pashut Pshat and what people usually think.
They just use the drush in the Havamina. They drush under the Havamina.
Right. On the Pashut Pshat. Not everybody holds this so far, that but the person who carried it touches it for no reason or carries it for no reason, he's the person who is tamei. And everybody agrees to that. But Rabbi Kiva says one more point, that if you sprinkle on somebody, even if he did a ritual of sprinkling, but he was torn, he didn't need it, he also is like, he's just touching it for no reason. He also becomes tamei. And I want to say that if you did it for the purpose of sprinkling, even though he didn't need it, that's not called stop touching his stomach.
Does he have to know that it was the person was tahor in order for him to become?
If you don't need it, It's like people go to the mikveh for no reason. You know, like you don't have to. Person's store, you go to the mikveh. So maybe sprinkling on the Torah doesn't make it any worse. Like going to the mikveh, even though he's Torah. Okay. So more or less, that's what the Gemara wanted. And we could really, if someone wants to just get the point of the Gemara without all the background, so we could just go back to the Kasha, which was only the first two lines, that L'chara our Mishnah is against Rabbi Akiva, because according to Rabbi Akiva, if he sprinkled on him every day and he doesn't need it, so he became Tameh, he can't do it Avoda, and our Mishnah says he does Avoda every day. So that's the Gemara's Kasha, and so far Chisda said is against Rabbi Akiva. Now we're on the first line of Amud Beis. Abaye Omar afilu teimu Rabbi Akiva. David Avoda kula yoma ulapanya. Panya means towards the evening. Madu alei, they sprinkle on him. Madu, that's the dalet is in Aramaic. The tovil, then he goes to the mikvah. Vavra ev shemesh. So it's a simple answer. We could have thought about it ourselves. It doesn't say you have to sprinkle on him in the morning. You have to sprinkle on him once a day, every day. During the 7 days, you sprinkle on him every day, or the third and the seventh. But you don't have to do it right away in the morning. So we tell him, do avodah the whole day. Like the Mishnah says, our Mishnah says, do avodah. So do avodah the whole day. And then there's a mitzvah to sprinkle on him every day. So before evening, an hour before Shkia, whatever, 10 minutes before Shkia, they sprinkle on him. He goes to the mikveh right away. And then he has Erev Shemesh. And then he's ready to do avodah the next day again. That's a simple answer. That even though it says you sprinkle, it's not a contradiction to sprinkle on him every day and also to do avodah every day. As long as you do avodah first. And then you sprinkle on him. And then he goes to the mikveh and he has Erev Shemesh at night. He can do avodah again the next morning. So the heart is not machlokas over here. Everybody should agree to this. Abba is just saying, make sure, according to Rabbi Akiva, that you would do avodah first and then sprinkle on him afterwards. We don't pass like Rabbi Akiva, so halacha l'maisa, it's not going to be nogeya that he could do the sprinkling right away in the morning because he doesn't have to go to the mikveh because he doesn't become tamei according to Rabbanan. So that's what he's
What's
finished.
the Avid, the last word?
Which word?
The Avid.
Avid means to do. Avid Erev Shemesh. But Oseh Erev Shemesh. Avid is a
So
common
who's
word.
doing that?
The Kohen Gadol. The Kohen
same Kohen
Gadol.
Gadol.
There's only one Kohen Gadol. The
So
Kohen Gadol.
he's going to mikveh. He's going to.
Yes, he goes to what is it? The words are that the Kohen Gadol does avodah the whole day, but as long as he wants to, he can do avodah. Olopanya towards the evening, Madu alei, they sprinkle on him the mechatas, and he goes to the mikvah, betavil, and then he waits. Then he has Erev Shemesh, Avid Erev Shemesh. He does Erev Shemesh. Means you don't have to do Erev Shemesh. You just wait for Erev Shemesh, and then the sunset comes, and then he's tohor, and the next morning he can do avodah again. The whole point was just make sure the order is the right order. That the first do the avodah, and then if you sprinkle on
Anyway,
him first.
we're saying that it's a chumrah, the whole idea of making it to the every day.
Hazor. We're doing Hazor every day in order that Yom Kippur should come with that.
every day to
Make it very kadosh, very tohor when it comes to Yom
It
Kippur.
was very much here.
No, that wasn't the point. The point was Rabbi Akiva here is the opposite. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says that by the iman on him, you're messing him up, you're making him tummy for the day. And that the Gemara says, so go to the mikvah and do the avodah before you do Hazor. That shouldn't stop him from doing avodah. If you do Hazor right away in the morning, Rabbi Akiva is going to say you can't practice avodah today. So do the avodah first and then do the Hazor later and go to the mikvah and then you're ready to do the avodah the next morning again. Okay, if that's good, we go on to the next subject. This is a side point which we get very much in the next couple of days about the Seder Avodah. People in the morning, they say Kavanas, they say the Marocha. There's a whole Seder how you do the Avodah every day. And now we came a little bit into the Seder Avodah, the regular day, not Yom Kippur. We'll get into Avodah Yom Kippur later on in the Masechta. But the Mishnah mentioned, Agav, that every day that the Kohen Gadol during the 7 days he practices the regular Avodah. So it says in the Mishnah that who's Zarek es Adam, the Maktir Saktor. Just scroll back a second to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, who Zarek es Adam, Maktir Saktoris, Meitav Asaneros, Maktir Rosh Regel. So in the order, the more is going to be focusing on the order that it says. He does a Zrika, and then Taurus, and then he cleans out the menorah, Meitav Asaneros, and then he brings the Rosh Regel. And the Gemara is going to concentrate on these two things, the Taurus and the Neros. And our Mishnah says they does Taurus first. And nothing special about the Kohen Gadol, just doing regular avodah on the 7 days before.
This is Zarek Adam first.
Yes, but that's not going to be an issue. Everyone agrees to that. But Maktir Sektor, the Gemara is going to focus on the next two, number 2 and 3. Maktir Sektoros, Meitav Asaneros. That's going to be the Gemara's focus. It says Ktoros goes before the Atavos Aneros, and the Gemara is going to ask the Kasha. At other places it says differently. So we go back to the Gemara, 4th, 5th line. Umaktir Sektoros, Meitav Asaneros. Alma Ktoros Bereisha of other Neros. So our Mishnah seems that the Ktoros goes first, and then the Atavos Aneros. And the Gemara Kasha from Mishnah Maseches Tamid. Says in the side Tamid, that's over there. The whole Masechta talks about the Seder Avodah on a regular day basis. Tamid, Maseches Tamid. So over there it says Misha Zacha B'Dishna Mizbeach HaPnimi, and then it says Misha Zacha B'Menorah, and then it says Misha Zacha B'Ktoros. Rashi says over there it's talking about what everybody does, in the order of how they're supposed to do it. And it says first is Lisha Mizbeach HaPnimi. I don't know why the Gemara brings it down. It's not necessary for our purposes that the one who cleans off the Mizbeach means the Mizbeach HaPnimi means the golden altar where they had the Torahs burning every day. This is not Yom Kippur, a regular day. So it says that in the morning they clean off the Mizbeach from the ashes of the Torahs that was brought yesterday. But then Misha Zacha B'Menorah, the person who got the schus, means they have a goal of it. They throw lots over there. We'll see later on the Masech how they do it. And different people got different privileges, which avodah they should do. So the person who got the privilege to do the clean the mizbeach, then he does what he's supposed to do. Then the person who got the schus to clean the menorah, he does that. And then it says the person who got the schus to do the ketores, he does the ketores. So you see that the order is that the first goes the tovos and eres, and then goes the ketores. A contradiction to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that the first goes the ketores and then the cleaning of the menorah. And the Mishnayos and Talmud, it says they clean the menorah and then they do the ketores. So a contradiction between two Mishnayos and the order which goes first, the ketores or cleaning the menorah. So the Gemara says you're right, it's a machlokis, and it doesn't bother us. It's not a contradiction, it's a machlokis, because we know that there's a special opinion of the Second Talmud is of Shimon Mitzpah. That's his name of the place that he comes from. He comes from Mitzpah, of Shimon from the city of Mitzpah. So, and the Gemara had a Masorah that Masechus Talmud is authored by him. And therefore, it's Taka Machlokis, and our Mishnah argues on him, which goes first, the Torah or the Matovos and Eros Machlokis, and two different Tanoim. But the Gemara says, we'll see right away that the Gemara thought of Shimon Mitzpah because that was the answer, but the Gemara got it mixed up. He mixed up who's who. Is Am Masechta Reb Shimon Mitzpah or Masechus Talmud? First, the Gemara thought that Masechus Talmud is authored by Shimon Mitzpah. The Gemara is going to bring down, no, on the contrary, he argues on Masechus Talmud, and the Gemara is going to say, so you're right, Masechus Yuma was authored by Reb Shimon Mitzpah. So that's how the Gemara starts. Top line over here. We have an opposite. We know that Reb Shimon Mitzpah is against Maseches Talmud. How could you say Maseches Talmud is Reb Shimon Mitzpah?
Top line?
No. If you have a screen.
Oh, where you were.
Yeah. It's the first one on the line is Shamina. What is that? About 10 lines down. Well, Ipcha Shamina. We heard the opposite from Reb Shimon Mitzpah. The Tan. Badal came Mizrachas Tzfonis. No sin Mizrachas Tzfona. Rav is Dromas. No sin Rav Droma. So this has nothing to do with our subject at all. But the Gemara just brings the Mishnah Maseches Talmud that the Gemara knows is against Reb Shimon Mitzpah. It doesn't make a difference what subject it is. You see that Maseches Talmud is not authored by Reb Shimon Mitzpah. Over there, it's talking about the Korban Talmud. How do you put the blood onto the Mizbeach? So if we recall this thing, there's a thing called Shtaim Shein Arba. There are two that you break down into four and two. What does that mean? That you have to put the blood on the Mizbeach on all four corners of the Mizbeach, but you don't do each corner by a Korban Ola. You do two diagonal corners, and each corner when you throw the blood onto the mizbeach, so it spreads out onto both sides. You do it in the corner in a way that some blood should go to one side, the other side. That's called Shtaim Shein Arba. And you do two diagonal corners, and it says which two diagonal corners? You do northeast and then southwest. Those are the two corners of the mizbeach that you sprinkle the blood on, and that's a Mishnah Maseches Talmud. But Reb Shimon Mitzpah and Brisa argues on that Mishnah. So that's what the Gemara is going to prove, that he's not the author of Maseches Talmud, because he would have said differently. What's Reb Shimon Mitzpah? We'll just say it outside, then we'll say it inside. That he holds, it's true, at a regular Korban Ola, I agree, that's how you do it. You do it on the two diagonal corners, Shtaim Shein Arba, you do northeast, southwest. But by the Korban Talmud, it's different. Korban Talmud, you do true northeast. I agree to you. The northeast you do like that. But when you get to the southwest, you don't do southwest. You do west alone and then south alone. It's going to be shalosh Shein Arba. That only
Nobody never learns like that. I mean, I've never heard
okay, here we are. The Brisa of Shimon Mitzpah. So you weren't in the school of Shimon Mitzpah.
No.
In his school, that's how they learned it. So the Mishnah and Talmud.
the halach is not like him.
Right, we pass like Rabbanan. So, but the Gemara says that the Mishnah, Stam Mishnah Maseches Talmud says it is Shtaim Shein Arba, northeast, southwest. Reb Shimon Mitzpah argues over there and says no. So you can't say Maseches Talmud is authored by Reb Shimon Mitzpah. There's a Mishnah against him. The Tanya Allah, let's just see it inside. First, the Mishnah says that you come to the northeastern corner. No, so the Mizrachas Tzfona. Then you put one matnas down. You throw the blood northeast. Rav is Dromas, no, so Rav Drom. You come to the southwestern corner and you do the southwest in one shot. You do south and west, southwest. But Tanya Allah, but we don't have the Brisa on that Mishnah. Reb Shimon Mitzpah Mishana b'Tamid. Reb Shimon Mitzpah changes Mishana. He changes in the Korban Talmud different than a regular Korban Ola. And he says Mizrachas Tzfona is no Mizrachas Tzfona. I'm asking. Then in the northeastern corner he does northeast, one shot. But my Rav is Dromas, no sin my Rav. V'achach no sin Droma. You do that in two stages. First you do west, and then you do south. So you see the Mishnah Talmud is not Rav Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah. So the Gemara says, you're right, I made a mistake. El Amr Rav Yochanan, Matana say the Yoma, Rav Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah. Who? Not that, we had a Masorah that was the answer, but we got mixed up who's who. It's true that this is Machlokis, that's what the Gemara wanted to say, this is Machlokis, but the Machlokis, Maseches Yoma against Maseches Tamid, and who's the Rav Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah, Maseches Yoma, that in our Masechta, the one who authored the Hilchas Tamid that it says in Mishnayos Yom in our Masechta was Rav Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah. And it's not Machlokis, it's really Machlokis, and it's not a contradiction, it's a Machlokis. Which goes first, the Torah or the cleaning of the menorah? Machlokis. The Mishnah Talmud holds that the menorah goes first, and in our Mishnah says that the Torah goes first. Good, the Gemara's happy. But now the Gemara is also not happy. The Gemara continues, V'ram, say the Yoma, say the Yoma. Now we have an internal contradiction within Maseches Yoma. So far we just put Maseches Tamid someplace else. But now our Mishnah is Rav Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah. But we have two Mishnahs within our Masechta, which also seem to contradict each other. Because so far we said our Mishnah says that the Torah is first, and we can have another Mishnah which says that the menorah is first. The Tanan, Pais Hasheni, Mishochet, Mizorek, Midash and Mizbech HaPnimi, Midash and Samanora, Mimali Ram Lakevesh. This is a Mishnah that it says later on in Nam Masechta, in the next parak, and over there it talks about the payasos. Payasos means like you call a payas, it means a goral, a lottery, and they throw lots to see who's going to do the avoda each day. And over there it says in the second goral, payas sheni, the second payas, so then a lot of people are zocha, not only one at a time. They do one payas that's going to have many jobs, and it goes in a row. The one who wins, so he gets one thing, and then next one. So it says that second goal is going to be who's the one who's shochet, who's going to be the shochet, and next to him, who's going to be the zorek, who throws the blood, who's going to clean off the inner mizbeach, that's what we want. We want this point, that you see that in the payas sheni, in the second payas was already the one who's going to clean the menorah. Who's going to bring up the limbs of the animal to the kevesh, to the ram, and then later on goes from the ram onto the mizbeach. But anyway, all this is the payas sheni. And then payas shlishi, what's the third goro, the third hagrala, the third lot? Hadashim l'ktos bo b'fisa. Over there, it points out that hadashim l'ktos means that you only invite to this payas, to this hagrala, only people who never did ktoras ever before. That's why she brings down, because it says that the one who did the ktoras had a merit to become rich and wanted to give everybody a chance. So if someone did Torah already, you don't just he can't even come into the payas. He doesn't get a chance to come in because we want to give everybody a chance. But anyway, what do you see? That the menorah was in the second payas and the Torah was in the third payas. So the Gemara sees from there that the order is first the menorah and then the payas and then the Torah. And then the Torah. And our Mishnah said the Torah goes first and then the menorah. So it's an internal contradiction within the same Masechta. The Yom Masechta told me that it said that menorah was first. So we said, okay, that's a different Tana. Our Tana holds of Shimon L'Shem Mitzvah. But now we see that even within our Masechta also, it says that the menorah goes first. Contradicts our Mishnah. The Gemara answers, Amar Abaye, lo kasha. Kan ba'tava shtei neiros, kan ba'tava chomesh neiros. That's the answer. That is not a contradiction, that the neiros, the menorah itself, is divided into two stages. And even though there are seven, how do you say the seven, what are they called? 7 neiros, 7 lamps. There were 7 lamps on the menorah, but he didn't clean out all of them together. They were divided. He didn't do 7, you did 5 and 2. First you did 5, and then you divided it with something, but the Gemara is going to say now that they divided it with the Ketores, and then they did the last 2. They cleaned out 5, and they left still 2 that were not cleaned out yet. And then they did something else, which is going to be the Ketores, and then they cleaned out the last 2. So therefore, it answers the contradiction in the Mishnah. When our Mishnah says that they did the Ketores first, it means the Ketores was before the 2. But the other Mishnah that said, which really is the 5 was done already, which is a little bit tricky. So why doesn't it say the 5 which were first? We'll get to that in a second. But what the Gemara is saying is that our Mishnah is talking about the Ketores and the last 2. So therefore, the Ketores is first before the cleaning out of the last 2 of the menorah, and the Mishnah later on that says that the order was the menorah and then the Ketores is talking about, but that was the 5. The 5 did go first. 5, they cleaned out 5 of the lamps of the menorah, then they did the Ketores, and then they did the other 2. So both Mishnahs are reconciled. The obvious question would be, so how come it's in our Mishnah, if there's 5 to do before that, so why doesn't it say that? Why does our Mishnah jump to the Ketores and then the last 2? Why not talk about the first 5? So Taisva says that the Kohen Gadol was our Mishnah talking about what the Kohen Gadol practiced. Kohen Gadol, so that Taisva says it's here in our page over here, the last few narrow lines. Here's the Taisva over here. Here it is, about 6 lines before it spreads. Why does it say in our Mishnah the 5 that were done before? Our Mishnah says the Torah and the 2. Why doesn't it say the 5 that were before also? It should have said the 5 and then the Torah. So he says that the Kohen Gadol didn't do that. Our Mishnah is just talking about what the Kohen Gadol did in the practice of the 7 days. So for some reason, we'll see soon more. Taisa said we'll see more later, but he didn't practice the Atavas Chomesh Neiros. He just practiced the 2. So therefore, when the Mishnah says that he did the Torahs and the Neiros, it says the Torahs first because the Torahs goes before the 2 and the 5 he didn't even do. Somebody else had to do it. A Kohen did it, but he didn't have to do it. That's what Taisa says. The Chara also there's another point Taisa talks about that this answer that it reconciles between the 2. The contradiction in the Mishnah is if it was Torahs first or the Neiros first, and the Gemara reconciles it by saying that there was a 5 and a 2, and that's why I can reconcile the contradiction, which is first, the 5 is before the Torahs, the 2 is after the Torahs. So the Gemara really could have reconciled the Mishnayos and Talmud also. Instead of saying that it's 2 different Tanoim, to say that it's Machlokas, it could have said that the Mishnah Talmud that says that the Neiros is first is the 5, and our Mishnah is talking about the 2. The Gemara could have reconciled our sugis also in the 2 Masechtas without having to say that it's a Machlokas. This is the beginning of the Kasha, and still the Gemara had another reason why we wanted to say that it's machlokas because of other reasons. But this contradiction also could have been reconciled that the Mishnah that said over there, Misha Zacha b'menorah before the Torah is taka because the 5 goes before the Torah. So we enter now the sugya of the order of the avoda, which Gemara is going to go at length. Tomorrow is going to be a big sugya what the order of the avoda is. So far we just spoke about the Torah and the Neiros, and it comes out, at least according to one opinion, that there's the Hatavas and Neiros was divided into 5 and 2, and therefore the 5 was before the Torah, and then the Torah, and then the 2. So our Mishnah talks about the Torah and the 2, and the other Mishnah is talk about the Neiros and then the Torah. That's the end of the sugya, and we're stopping over here today. The next sugya goes into the next Gemara. So we got up to Lememra. That's what we're up to. That's the next word, and Bez Hashem will soon be starting the Pirkei Avos. A little break for a few minutes, and we'll be continuing. If anybody wants to talk about anything, we could. Unofficially, we have a break now. So so far that's the end of the sugya. That comes out just today's sugyas. That the first point was about Rabbi Kiva, who says that the person who sprinkled upon him if he stores, so then he becomes tamei. So we don't pass him like that. We pass him like the Rabbanan will say he doesn't. Everybody agrees that the mazel of Torah, not like the Pashup Pshat. If somebody touched the meichatas, he becomes tamei. If he carries the shear of the hazah, which would be enough in the bowl to be able to dip in the grass and then to also sprinkle on somebody. That's called the shear hazah. If somebody carried that for no reason, so then he's tamei. And how machlokas in Agamar was if someone sprinkled on somebody with intention, with the ritual of sprinkling on him, does it become tamei or not? Machlokas Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanan, we pass him like Rabbanan. According to Rabbi Kiva, if they would do hazah every day, so then you'd have to first do the avodah and then sprinkle on him, go to the mikveh and have shemesh to be able to do the avodah the next day. As far as the next sugya was about the order of the avodah, and it comes out so far at least one shita holds that it was Hatavas Chomesh Neiros and then Torahs and then Hatavas Shtei Neiros. And the Kohen Gadol on his practice might have only done the Shtei Neiros, and that's why our Mishnah only mentions that. So we'll be resuming in a couple of minutes. Yashikot, everybody. Thank you.
Have a surgery.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. I mean, whoever's leaving, and everybody else also have a good day. We'll be back soon.
Rabbi, do you want to keep recording? I don't know if you want to store the regular classes as well as Daf Yomi.